Hello and welcome to our panel, A Tale of Two Companies. I'm Kathi Whitbey with Palo Alto Networks Unit 42, and I serve as the Threat Intelligence Program Manager there. I'm excited to be here today with Virus Bulletin 2021 and the Cyber Threat Alliance. Thanks for having us. I'm joined today by a panel of experts in cybersecurity who come with a wealth and breadth of knowledge to share with us today. Righard, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Kathi. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I am Righard Zwienenberg, the Senior Research Fellow at ESET, and in the industry now for 34 years. I'm serving on several industry bodies, as well as on the advisory group of Europol's AC3.
Thank you, Kathi. My name is Noortje Hendricks. I am the team leader of cyber threat intelligence and threat analysis at the Dutch National Cybersecurity Center.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Derek Manky with FortiGuard Labs. Been 18 years at Fortinet, 25 years in the industry. I also work on several industry initiatives, including I've been with the Cyber Threat Alliance since day one. I serve on the steering committee there currently. I also work with the Interpol Global Cybercrime Expert Group too. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Looking forward to this chat this morning. Righard, you came up with the idea of a tale of two companies for this panel. What will we be discussing today?
Well, it is of course derived from The Tale of Two Cities, the novel from Charles Dickens that was set in London and Paris before and during the French Revolution, and where the story is set against the conditions that led up to the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror. And I thought it would be really nice actually to transpose it into the now, because nowadays CISOs have to fight the reign of cyber terror. And having the same job in two different companies, one company saving money, not spending anything on threat intel, the other company spending it and also using threat intel, it can be difficult or easy, but being the difference between being hacked or being safe. And I thought this was a great topic for this panel to discuss the importance of threat intelligence in building defenses against cyber attacks, including the vision for the future, what are we up against, and how can we help organizations to be properly prepared.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today with you all. As threat intelligence practitioners, what is the best piece of advice you could give to organizations as they begin to prepare for possible cyber attacks? Noortje.
Well, my advice would be just know what you're up against in terms of digital threats. Because if you know what kind of threats your organization is facing, then it helps to prioritize your security measures. And it also gives you an argument for management to secure funding and to have them committed to the goal of cybersecurity.
Yeah, you know what, Kathi, I would agree with that. I think that I also always tell organizations and just people in general when I talk about threat intelligence and preparedness is to try to keep it simple. We live in a very complex threat landscape. And it can be overwhelming a lot of the time. So, and I think there's simple measures, certainly just breaking it down to, detecting first of all, but really knowing your footprint. I think it's important so that your crown jewels, as it were, priority assets, things that if they go offline, is that a bottom line critical risk to the business, as an example, because these are likely things that, cyber criminals are smart nowadays, right? That they're going to be going after. So knowing that first, knowing that and having detection points on those pieces, I think are really important. But then also make the intelligence actionable, right? There's always that bridge between intelligence and actionable threat intelligence. And as an example, having things like security operation planning for preparedness, incident response planning, so that you actually have something to go off of if and when these attacks do happen. It gives organizations much more confidence. And all too often, unfortunately, we've seen this before, where if there's not that preparedness, it's scrambling last minute, and that can lead into a lot of trouble, specifically with ransomware too.
Righard.
Yeah, I agree. The easy thing is actually to chart your infrastructure. And I mean, really every connection, every type of device or hardware, every application. So you know what to monitor for in threat intel. And that is actually really helping. And then really follow the breaking news of a new exploit being discovered and see if it maps into your infrastructure. Like you said, Derek, make it simple.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Norcha, from a CERT perspective specifically, how do you help your constituents prepare, and what specific defense mechanisms do you promote as a CERT?
Well, the big challenge for national CERTs is the quantity of affiliated organizations who all face different threats. As a national CERT, we help organizations in a generic way. We help to paint the threat landscape that they're facing. We will also facilitate partnerships for organizations that are within the same industry, for instance, like ISECs. And we also deliver specific threat information, for instance, the feed of indicators of compromise. And we deliver warnings if we identify a relevant threat for organizations in our constituency. Because we work with so many organizations with different needs and with different threat profiles, we promote two kinds of defense mechanisms. First, the more specific ones, and these are on the basis of actual threats. And we also promote a set of basic measures. We consider proper cyber hygiene. For instance, we promote network segmentation or testing your backups on a regular basis. And I must admit, they really sound simple enough, but we know organizations sometimes lack the need or lack the motivation to implement these most basic of measures. And that has a huge impact on their cyber resilience.
Awesome. And Righard, what ways do you share threat intelligence that helps in this fight against cyber attacks?
Oh, we share it in several different ways in our blogs, our research and white papers, the threat intel reports, and the threat intelligence platform. But we also share it with the threat intel with law enforcement. We do like to share it, the intel with others. The problem is that some companies now started to realize that threat intel is monetizationable, and that is not a problem per se, but it hampers the free sharing of threat intel at worst, or timely sharing at best.
And Derek, I know that you're involved with the Cyber Threat Alliance. What are some other ways that you all share threat intelligence?
Yeah, I like to, go back to the classic pyramid of pain, right? That's been around for a while, which is obviously at the bottom layer when we talk about bulk, right? There's a lot with threat intelligence. Again, it can be overwhelming when you talk about IOCs, right? So IP addresses, URLs, hashes, things like that. There's a lot of that, and it's valid, to share. But that sort of sits at the bottom of this, similar to an OSI model, right? You have like network and IOCs and all that stuff at the bottom. And then as you move up in the layers, you get up to this sort of layer 7, which is more context rich, threat intel, like we're doing with the Cyber Threat Alliance with the Magellan platform, where we actually have, of course, things like TTPs mapped and kill chain phases mapped. And this, malware was shown on this or observed on a certain URL as an example. So that's the what, right, can be shared. And then there's also this layer 8, which is the humans. And I think that's very important too. There's two different ways of threat intelligence. You have the automated, of course, which is absolutely necessary. But then you also have the human to human intelligence, which is also critical. And, that's something I think with the CTA, we've done a really great job. But that's another way of, how do you execute the sharing? So you have platforms like MISP and Styx and Taxi and, Magellan. It's really important to be flexible in terms of how you integrate. We found there's no just there are some gold standards, but there's never a silver bullet, right? You always have to be able to be flexible with these things. And with the CTA, we have analysts that get on calls, right? It's been so great to be able to share intelligence on breaking threats. I think it's really important.
Thanks, everyone. Derek, specifically, what strategies do you use in order to help convince executives to make investments in threat intelligence?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to executives and businesses and organizations, you have to speak in that language, not as a technologist, right? You have to show risk, business risk, things that are that could affect the bottom line. And the best way to do that, of course, is through really opening the eyes. And there's a lot of exercises that can be done for this. Things like breach and attack simulation as an example. So this is sort of modern day penetration testing, showing scenarios, in the eyes of an attacker. This is what a scenario could play out. And of course, if you can actually show ways into a network, those are obvious gaps and easy ways to convince executives that there are some problems that need to be addressed. At the same time, what those problems are, right? I think there's a lot of great reporting out there. Cost of a data breach is one of them as an example. It's no secret, but the numbers are there, right? The costs continue to rise, and it's clear that the amount of investment up front for security is relatively small compared to the damages, collateral damages that can occur. In the US, the average cost of just one data breach in all verticals has risen to over $4 million US, as an example. Healthcare is over 9 million. And, it's a matter of doing the math at that time, but the numbers play out.
Mm-hmm. And Richard, do you think awareness alone is enough to make a dent in this?
Oh, definitely. You have to start at the root of the solution, and that is education and awareness. In general, if people are not aware, how can they defend themselves? I always like to use that with something they do understand, like physical security. You lock your door, otherwise people may enter your house. The burglars are still active though. So a lock is not enough. That is what people understand. So then we add like a security system that adds a layer of protection, a layer of prevention. But again, it's not enough. So we add a camera, etc., etc. So we have been adding all these layers in physical security, and that is what people understand because they have seen it is effective in like movies and TV shows, maybe dramatized, but we got it and we are aware and accepted that. But now, of course, if we move that to threat intelligence and the awareness to make a dent against the attackers, yeah, the postings, white papers, free educational material to create awareness. It is really necessary to protect your digital infrastructure and to add layers of defense. And you cannot add a layer of defense if you are not aware. So yes, even if it's your only or your first layer, every layer you build because of awareness really helps defending it and making that dent. So yes, I actually do believe that.
Awesome. Derek, back to something that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago with the cost of cyber attacks. What is it that we can do to reduce the profiteering of these cyber criminals?
Oh, great question. Hard answer, but there's a lot of initiatives. All of the above, I would say. But so we at the end of the day, we have to disrupt cybercrime. We have to make it more expensive for cyber criminals to operate, and there's multiple ways to do that, of course, and that all has to come together in a sort of concerted effort. At one, on the left-hand side, as it were, if we look at kill chain, it's about disrupting the supply chain of cyber criminals. Very simply, all the stuff we just talked about, organizations beefing up their security, the efforts we're doing in the CTA to raise the stack, raise the bar in threat intelligence, the mitigation and prevention piece, that certainly helps with that, right, on the profiteering. But then we need to go further, right? And this is where we work together between what we need to do more in the industry, of course, is targeting the infrastructure, right? So looking at how we can take threats offline in collaborated efforts, because if you don't do it, then the efforts aren't as effective as an example, or possibly can't be as. And then also going after the cyber criminals themselves, their money, the assets, looking at things like cryptocurrency flow and platforms. And then also on the far right-hand side, as it were, the attribution piece, which is hard, right? That's obviously working with law enforcement to be able to send a message back to cyber criminals. I think they have a very strong sense of security right now, unfortunately, and we need to change that. So more arrests, more prosecution. There was some great, work this year, as an example, going after arresting affiliates of ransom as a service model. So actually the business partners of these organizations. I think that's great. And those are things we need to do more of.
So that kind of wraps up what we refer to as our return on investment, and how we work with organizations to show them what the return on investment is in threat intelligence, as well as working with organizations such as yours, to bring that awareness and to help put those protections in place. From a future perspective, let's talk for a couple of minutes about what we see in our future. What are the threats companies need to be thinking about in the near future? And can you talk briefly about what examples or manifestations you've seen that have raised a flag of concern for you, Righard?
Oh, sure. Well, not going into the details of a specific threat, we need to pay more attention to the operating system and the infrastructure. Already twice in a short time frame now, we had a Windows printer spool a remote code execution vulnerability, some other Windows-related issues, and then I heard people think, oh, we have to move everything into the cloud. Is that safe? Well, think about the supply chain attacks. Remember Kaseya? Ransomware cascading down to hundreds of companies, affecting supermarkets, schools, IT companies worldwide. We have to make the operating systems and cloud connections more resilient against attacks, against misuse, because definitely in the future that is going to happen more and more. So it's not about a specific threat, but more like really look at the operating system and the cloud and your infrastructure and really watch that.
Absolutely. And why is it important, Nortje, for CISOs to use threat intelligence, even if they think, well, I already have protections in place? Why is this important to me?
Because I think threat intelligence gives you the tools to prioritize on your security measures and the money you spend on them, of course. Because threat intelligence gives you knowledge on existing or emerging digital attacks. It can help you with decisions on which response is the most logical course of action. So I would say threat intelligence saves you both time and money.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our final thoughts, which is our call to action. So what would be your final thoughts, your final suggestions, comments that you'd like to share with our audience today? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I would say when you're facing a threat as an organization, please do not hold your cards against your chest and share what you know about the attack, about the modus operandi, because otherwise it has a negative impact on the community. And I think it's very important to share your threat intelligence because so that the incident at one organization can become a warning to all others.
Sure. Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very important point. Even one small bit of threat intelligence, just like in the world of physical crime, of course, with cybercrime, it can go a long way. I think, and the other thing is, but again, we've seen some progress with this, but I'd definitely like to see more of it in the industry. And I think it's a great thing is the trust, right? As we need to get to we need to get to the table more often, so to speak, like every week, every 2 weeks, build that trust, lead to early trusted sharing. Going back to what Nortje was just saying with the not holding the cards too close, that comes with trust. And that can go a long way, right? Because it allows us to level the playing field on threat intelligence, specifically, when it comes to, adding those security controls as an example before wider spread public knowledge is exposed to.
Righard.
Yeah, I would also add actually that even if you're not a security vendor, but a security user, also to speak up timely, because you maybe have been hit and that is not good. And your security vendor may not have prevented it, but the competitor may, and they may use it, and everybody else may use that intelligence then to safeguard them. And in the end, that will help you again. Besides, what is there to hide nowadays? Everything is going so fast. Most likely, the newspaper knows that you have been hacked before you know it yourself. But do share, because sharing is actually the key item to make this much more safe.
I agree. And I agree with all of your points. I think that together you've been able to provide a good amount of information that can get people started on thinking more about awareness and how we look between the two companies. We have the tale of two companies, and which company do we want to be at the end of the day? Do we want to be the company that holds all of our money and uses it for other things, or do we want to use our money to make that investment to provide protections for our customers and for ourselves within our own company? So I appreciate all three of you joining me here today, and I enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to having more conversations with all three of you as we move forward with cybersecurity, and hopefully out of 2021 and maybe get to do some of this in person next year in 2022. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kathi.
Thank you.